Welcome to Glacial Inferno Gaming. My name is Jay, and I wanted to put together an update to my Unbound Ailments build. It's been a little bit since the last update. I've done some more testing and wanted to kind of bring this full circle, if you will. So with that, I'll try to put some gameplay up above while I cut the video. It'll be my first attempt, so bear with me. With it though, I wanted to go over a couple of things that we have discovered through feedback with the YouTube channel, as well as some further testing and what that means going forward. So one of the things that was pointed out that was very beneficial was actually mentioned by MTZ00022. Greatly appreciate the feedback. That was game saving. So solar fall, as we have discovered, has a much higher probability of crashing the game than anything else that I was using. And what this was causing was it was preventing me from doing any 3 levels of a single expedition. It would crash out right around the time I got to the boss, or even a little bit before. Even if I could finish a map with solar fall, I would either crash in town or crash very quickly right into the next one. So we have taken this off of the build for the time being. I do believe it is a very powerful component of the build, and I also believe that the sacred damage that it provides when paired with Dawn's Pious Striker from EOS, as well as Sudden Death, are a massive damage increase and quality of life. Unfortunately, right now it's just not very viable. So another thing that was pointed out was Mark of Impurity here. Let me try to find who mentioned that. I'd like to give credit where it's due. This was brought to my attention by Katrina TV. I thank you very much for that. Where it was pointed out that weight of culpability currently is bugged and does not do anything. So with that, they also pointed out that a sentence accepted does work. So this node and big game hunting are each a 10% additional damage on top of the 20% that Mark of Impurity provides, which gives us a 40% damage boost from using it. So we do use Guilt by Association for spreading it, and taking a little bit of inspiration from some of the Dotsplosion builds out there and other builds to try to actually clear some things and increase our clear speed. We have switched to Fate of the Unholy. Really for the time being, we'll see how that plays out going forward, but right now that definitely increases our clear speed to be able to pull up a bunch of monsters and blow them all up. This is not an original idea of mine, so I don't want to take any credit for it, but I'm using it at the moment to make things a little bit more palatable. One of the other things I wanted to point out in my last video, I talked all about the ailment damage themselves and how the ailment damage over time was just not quite where we wanted it to be. And one thing that I completely left out is all of the damage we're doing that applies the ailments. So I was rerunning some numbers based on this new information with the similar sheet that we were using before. Let me bring that over. No, do not maximize. Damn it. Alright, so playing around with some theoretical maximums, using the 175 for having 7 ailment stacks of Immortal Offering, with now the 20% mark of impurity as well as the 20% from the base. What I have come up with where my character is currently, and we're talking 693 attributes from, or damage from the attributes, which I think right now is 683.9. I did some changing, so we'll change that. I have 106% increased damage from my gear, 16% increased damage from the tree, 192% increased ailment damage from the tree, which I actually think I need to cut that back a little bit. Yeah, I need to take 24 off of that. 168. I don't have any increased ailment damage on gear. I do have 69% material damage, 70% bleed damage, and overall minus, this should be 38 on spell, and we'll also cut this down by minus 30 as well to take that to minus 14. So that accounts for merciless lethality here, since we are scaling the crit damage pretty much exclusively for the explosions, just for clear at the moment. That puts us at a theoretical maximum of 457,000 DPS from our ailments alone. And then we'll take Solar Fall out for the moment because it's not in the build, but using Tear of Ethereal with Wailing Arrows, 2 Anomalies, and 2 Avenger Turrets. I was calculating out their rough damage hits per second, if you will, and the average hit being the base damage times the percentage to crit times the crit multiplier, which gives us a good average approximation, times any sort of damage increase, so like the Immortal Offering and the Mark of Impurity, so we've got those two in there as well, and the sum of all of our percent damage, plus for specific ones, spell damage or material damage. And with that, if we were to maintain all of our damage, all of our attacks, so we're talking 2 Anomalies, and we put another turret on there as well, if I can actually get it, which in the middle of a battle you'll have a little bit more rage. If we can maintain all of those on a single target that's immobile, which is made easier by the fact that we've now managed to maintain our freeze even when we stack Immortal Offering. This helps with any bosses that don't have the Unstoppable modifier, making it very easy to break their guard and completely freeze them. Well, not freeze, but interrupt them, stun them, allow you to have them sit there and take a good bit of damage. So in an ideal, perfect case, all of our skills dealing average damage with all of our ailments at 30% stack, or 30 stacks rather. What I've come up with is putting us at a total DPS of about 800,000 DPS. Now this can be improved by bringing a bunch of monsters with you to the boss to help clear it down faster. But one of the challenges is, if the fight lasts more than about 15 to 20 seconds, which it inevitably will, you will find yourself without Immortal Offering, which cuts our DPS down to 288,000 in an ideal case. So you might be sitting at about 250,000 DPS throughout the boss fight. Definitely not doable, but it can be painful at times. Now with this though, with this setup here, I find it very easy to be able to run fully juiced Paragon Untainteds without any problems. I can tear through them, I can just pretty much, it's easy farming. And at Paragon you're 130, so you're not getting perfect max gear, but you are high enough to get the higher rolls and to still get Untainteds, and it's just very easy farming. I can run Ascended fairly well. It's just time consuming mainly, and that's why I've had to start focusing a lot on survivability. So part of the tree changes, part of the gear changes are all to increase our resistance scores to try to get this up to ideally 70 to 75% resistance, which would help with survivability, and then try to get our life up a little higher as well. With this, we are a little less prone to one-shots than we were, so that definitely helps. As for the unique belt, I have been playing around with the O'Malley's Lucky Belt, so I'm not getting much in the way of benefits from it, except from the magic find, just to see if we can try to get our hands on a trial belt, but also, not benefiting from the +2 ailment stack belt that I have in here, or +1, sorry. So I've been starting to upgrade my gears into legendary as I find decent rolls. I have shifted away from trying to focus on percent damage per piece of gear. As all told, we're looking at maybe 150%, which is not that life-changing at the end of it. And focus more instead on all res, cooldown reduction, transfer time, and attributes, so that we can get our attribute scores up, which has helped because on a previous iteration I was around 530% increased total damage from attributes here, whereas now we're up to 683, and all of this is achieved from more attributes. So I'm beginning to believe that more attributes are more beneficial than percent damage on a piece of gear. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, but I definitely think that would help bring more damage as well as bring more survivability, especially if it's toughness, as I feel that's probably going to be the most beneficial long term. So, with that, most of the build is unchanged. I have updated it all on Wolcen Universe with my latest information and theoretical maximum. I think I could get both the ailment and the applying skills damage each to around 500,000 DPS, which would put us at 1 million DPS in pure ideal case, before the Plague Burst or Mark of Impurity explosions, which of course help just obliterate stacks of monsters. One thing we did find out today that I wanted to point out, as we were discussing in Discord, is Noxious Smog here does actually apply ailments with the damage on the ground. Very similar to the way that Anomaly does with its Pulse, as well as Solar Fall and even Winter's Grasp. So it seems any damage over time effect that's left on the ground does continue to count as a hit and then have the same probability to proc an ailment. And the way I tested this was using Noxious Smog with my Plague Burst, which has a freeze chance. So only putting that down and dropping a tier of Ethereal, which is only burn shock, and I was actually freezing enemies when caught in the smog. So that is a good piece to it, and something good to know, and adds a little bit extra damage for us. And minor modifiers like increased ailment damage I haven't tested very much, because most of them in my testing so far have been very small increases of 1 to 2% overall damage change. So I don't really think they're worth investing in. I focus more on chance and crit chance. That way we can apply the crit ailments as well as critting our explosions. So as you can see, with no investment in wisdom aside from gear, we actually get our ailment chances to about 44% on our elementals, 40% on our materials, and 31% on stasis. On occult, rather. A lot of that is due to the 275 material chance score here on our gun, which if we got that up to max would bring the material chance in line with the elementals. And then the 309 over here we have on the catalyst. One thing here I do want to point out, I did have to get both frost damage, the spells on my catalyst, as well as 2 socketed gems, just to keep frost on my plague burst and my anomaly, even with full immortal offering stacks. So that's kind of the state of where things are right now with the build. And with that, looking forward, so unfortunately it's been a very quiet week from Wolcen. We haven't heard anything from community manager, we haven't heard anything from devs, anything on any patch in the works, anything of that nature. The biggest piece of information to come out today has been an interview with hang on, bad memory, interview with Daniel DeLuey, talking about the roadmap for 2020. I don't want to take any credit for this, and I thought about doing a video about it specifically, but I'll just mention it in my video, and you can do with it what you will from there. But this was posted up on the Wolcen Reddit by Bonatix. I debated trying to get access to the video, which does cost, and then trying to translate it, but my German and my French are very, very rusty after all these years of non-use, so I figured that might just add more confusion. So I'll put a link to this in the comment below for anyone who wants to check it out. I do think it's an interesting read, and does give a little bit of explanation and also a little bit of a roadmap. So with that, there won't be any new content from what they're saying for the next 4 months, which I know a lot of people are already feeling like the end game's getting a little stale. So we'll have to see how the build guides change with all the patches, and I do intend to keep up to date on that. With that, next Friday, so a week from tomorrow at this point, I do intend to focus a bit on the new Path of Exile League, as I have in the past, and do that unless we get new changes from Wolcen, in which case I'll revisit and keep the build up to date, and then we will go from there and play it with a little bit of a wait and see. I do still have a lot of hope for Wolcen. Some of my favorite parts about it are the graphics, the customization, the fact that there's almost no there's no loading screens when changing zones. It's very quick. I think if they work out the kinks, the bugs, get things in a consistent state, I think it'll have a good foundation. Now, I was not part of the backers, I was not part of the Kickstarters, so I can't speak to anything of where it was, what it was, anything to that nature, as I'm pretty late to the scene and only started playing a couple of days before launch. But I think it will be interesting to see what they make of the game, and I definitely have some optimism. We'll have to see how well that pans out, but I'm always available to answer questions. I try to stay on the Discord rather frequently, mainly in the builds and gameplay portion, and I like testing out things with it and taking any sort of advice, feedback, so that we can continue to try to refine this into well-oiled machine, and we'll see how things change going forward. So with that, I appreciate all the feedback and everything that's gone into the build. I may start playing around with another build in the next week leading up to the Path of Exile piece, though I have been doing some Apex, which I do for fun on Xbox, and may start streaming a little bit more of. We'll see. But their new event that kicked off, having a little bit of fun with that. So that's what's going on for me. And yeah, as always, I appreciate the comments, the feedback, and anything we can do to make this better. So thank you for stopping by, and look forward to talking with you later.